What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin' Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by Tom. Tom, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good, Keith. Some sneaky this weekend, some sneaky snooze fest that we thought were gonna, pop off and be really interesting. Overall, I thought it was a pretty solid card. I'd give it a B minus.
Okay, yeah, B minus is fair. I'd probably hit him with an even B just because, I picked slightly better than you this week, but not enough to brag about. That was a humble brag. I won't be like I was maybe at like UFC 261 when I was kind of on fire at that point. But, we'll recap this week's event, and then next week or on our next episode, we'll be back on fire for 263. So, yeah, it was a tough week. But before we jump into a recap of this somewhat subpar UFC Fight Night card, we'll touch on like the hottest, most electric, not because of the performance, but because of the fan hype and because of the talk on the streets and on the social media. We got Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather. I'll let you give your take first, Tom, before I jump into what I think about that fight.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Logan just sheerly going the distance, I think, is a win for him, and he's taking it as such. Floyd doesn't have to take it as a loss, and this is something that we had talked about. I don't know if we got it on air, if we had talked about it on our own, but, Floyd really should have gotten him out of there. And I think the fact that they didn't allow for a decision, didn't allow for judges, I think, I guess part of that is because it's going to be an unsanctioned fight, so there can't be a winner. But at the end of the day, you have like rough and rowdy, you can roughly give a decision. So even if the decision is not going to matter, I think Floyd didn't want there to be a decision because, it could be skewed, and you never know what's going to happen. I don't think he wants to technically lose any rounds to a YouTuber. And if you were scoring that at home, Logan Paul did take the first 2 rounds. Now, whether Floyd allowed that to happen, wanted him to get gassed out, if Floyd wanted the thing to go to the distance. Floyd talked about carrying Conor McGregor for the most of the fight. Well, if it's a fight and you're trying to get him out of there, why are you carrying anybody? You should have gotten him out of there. So, we know that Floyd was, to a certain extent playing with his food, but I think, Logan's right to celebrate it as a win. He said it himself. He doesn't know if Floyd took it easy on him. Floyd did say that he didn't train all that much. So, a 43-year-old Floyd on like a half of a training camp, maybe went about 50%. But, Keith, there was that one time, and we were talking about it before, not sure if this was, Twitter magic and they clipped the perfect segment. We need to go back and watch it again to see if this is true. But there was that one time in one of the later rounds at the end where it looked like Logan came in and Floyd hit him with an uppercut and maybe a left. And at that point, Logan had dropped and Floyd was kind of sitting there holding him up. At least that's what it looked like in the Twitter video. I don't remember specifically seeing it. I remember, Logan looked like he draped on him a lot of times. But what were your thoughts of that? I don't know. From that Twitter video, it certainly looks like he was out. And we know that, Floyd admitted that he carries people into longer rounds.
Yeah, back to your point real quick about fighting Conor. Yeah, you do want to give the fans a show, but if it's your opponent, you want to get him out of there as quick as possible, especially against a guy like Conor, because as we saw when the two of them fought, Conor did catch him a lot and kind of stunned Floyd a few times. No way you're carrying someone and letting them get that quality of shot on you. Now, when it comes to that video, I'm sure everybody out there has seen it at this point. It is probably the hottest thing on Twitter at the moment in the fight world, at the very least. That's a tough thing to talk about from a did he knock him out, did he not standpoint, because what I would like to see, I'm going to have to go back, see that exact clip again, the whole screen. Were Logan's legs still under him? Were they still moving? Or was he like a dead body just flopping around like a dead fish? And Floyd truly did carry him for a little bit and like literally carry him. I don't know. Tough to say. But I think that's something we're all going to have to go back and look at again because, yeah, it does look one way, but Twitter, we all know, social media, people are very good at clipping things and making them look how they want to for a narrative. I will say this, though. Floyd, immediately after the fight, gave a lot of props to Logan Paul, and said, this kid is a lot better than everybody is giving him credit for. Logan, on the other hand, I really loved his energy coming out of it afterwards. He said it was an honor to share the ring with one of the GOATs. And there's no denying that Floyd Mayweather is one of the best, if not, depending on your opinion and where you stand, best boxer of all time. My biggest thing, though, coming out of this is maybe because it's an exhibition, Floyd didn't take it as hard as he could have. He looked like he was trying to put Logan Paul to sleep, and there's various reasons why that maybe didn't happen. But as one of the best boxers of all time, shouldn't you be putting a YouTuber to sleep? What do you think?
Like I said, I think it boils down to a few things. Number one, he was on half a training camp. Number two, he's 43 years old. Number three, I just don't think he took him all that serious. Number four, he had mentioned that he carried Conor, so why would he not carry Logan, at least into the later rounds? And I think maybe in the later rounds he had, when you're fighting somebody, there's a level of respect that you gain over the course of the fight. But a lot of that is largely negated by the fact that you want to win the fight. Well, Floyd maybe at one point didn't want to knock the kid out because, like, you got in here, you boxed pretty well. I have respect for you. Because of that, we'll go to a decision. And that's why he was like, yo, come on, stand up. Like, I don't, you came this far. I don't know. I don't think Floyd went in there to necessarily win or show off his skills. I think he went in there to have a fun time, test his skills, make a ton of money. And, who knows, maybe this will set him up with a fight with Jake, and now he kicked Jake's ass or something like that. Because I think there obviously is a lot of resentment there between him and Jake. I think Logan even said it too. He's like, hey, listen, I respect you guys. I love all you guys. I don't like being a dickhead. So he admitted right there that, all of the antics leading up to it that he did was, was just to sell a fight. It wasn't, and he really wasn't even an asshole about it. He was just kind of saying, like, listen, I think I can catch him. I think I can do this, like, blah, 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 blah. I don't think he was that much of a dick. Jake was the asshole, and, I don't think Jake is going to apologize. I don't think Jake is going to break character, if it is, in fact, a character. So, yeah, no, a lot of respect for Logan. He should take it as a win because he went 8 rounds, whether Floyd actually trained or tried or whatever. He should definitely take that as a win, a feather in his cap. And I'm interested to see where he goes from here. If, I think a lot of people respect Logan and, that he went in there against, now an actual boxer, and that he went some rounds with him. And, of course, Floyd is going to say that, oh, he's actually pretty good. He can't go 8 rounds and go, yeah, this kid sucks. So of course he's going to say, yeah, he's better than I thought he was going to be. But, yeah, at the end of the day, if Floyd actually went in there and wanted to and tried, I'm sure there would have been a different outcome. But I had even said, I don't think Floyd's going to knock him out. I think, Floyd is older, being bigger and younger. You have a better chin, but he could have, but he didn't. And I think he probably could have, but I didn't think he was going to. Let me put it that way. That was my stance.
Yeah, we had our buddy Jimmy Raiders on here, who was avidly and very adamantly telling us that Floyd Mayweather was going to knock out Logan Paul. That would be a cool name for this, Flogan. That would be a cool name for that fight. Yeah, but so we had Jimmy saying that, and if you follow him on Twitter, he was also chirping at me very actively, and had to put him down a little bit and remind him what he knows about the fight game. But on the other hand, too, if you follow us on our main Pickin Winners Twitter account, you might have seen that we tweeted out this was probably one of the safest bets of the year to put money on either of these guys because unless it ended in a knockout, it was no action. So I personally was riding with Logan Paul in this one just because of the underdog money mostly, and because he did have that chance to potentially catch Floyd. He did get a couple good shots on him, but because it ended the night, it ended the way it did in a draw, it worked out well for me. I didn't lose anything. I didn't gain anything, but it was very safe. There were a few moments where I was like, okay, this is it. Like that's down the drain. But, thankfully, Logan was way better than everybody thought he was going to be. It was kind of a shit show of a fight, a lot of hugging, a lot of clinching, but that is boxing in some sense. A lot of people do that dirty boxing style and do like to get in there and clinch. You hear from a guy like Ben Askren when he's getting ready to fight Jake Paul. And he says, I'm going to do dirty boxing and I'm going to clinch. So it's in the rule set. Yeah, it might be boring for some of the people at home, but that's just the game, and that's how it's played sometimes.
And that was Logan's only path to victory, right? If he went in there and boxed 8 3-minute rounds with Floyd, he's eventually going to get caught with something. His only path was to try and tie up Floyd, and because he even thought that, it's just I weigh 35, maybe in the ring. He was looking like he was a 205, 210, maybe even 220. I mean, he's 6'2", and he looked big for 6'2", unless he has absolutely no legs. That kid is probably 220 plus. So, he outweighed Floyd officially by 35 pounds, but I think it's way closer to 50. So if he just hang on him, he would have, his game plan was to just hang on him and put that extra weight on Floyd. And had he not done that, he definitely would have gotten caught with something.
Yeah, he did look like a big boy. But with that being said, if this would have been a decision fight, and we did have judges there, Floyd obviously wins that very easily, just because when you look at the striking numbers between the two of them, I think Floyd outstruck him by Logan Paul landed about 10% of his punches, and Floyd landed 50% of his normal punches. And then I think when you get to significant punches and everything like that, it was like 46% by Floyd to like 9% by Logan Paul. I could be wrong, don't quote me, but it was pretty significant between the two of them. Like you said, I personally gave Logan rounds 1 and 2. I thought he looked fantastic coming out of the gate. And then Floyd did Floyd things, did that defensive game. Personally, still think he was going for the knockout at some point, but that's always going to be up to debate. He had some heavy shots on Logan in there. Logan did catch him a few times in a few of the later rounds and potentially could have gotten round 8. That really would have come down to a judge's discretion. Public opinion doesn't really count for much in these situations. I thought it was a little bit entertaining. Not what I was hoping for. I was hoping for a knockout for Logan Paul on Floyd. Nothing against Floyd, but that would have been a spectacle. So, oh well, we'll see what happens next.
Hey, Showtime Boxing, so much better than Triller. I mean, you had it was an actual boxing event. You had Ocho Cinco fighting at first. You had the interviews. You had, boxer profile. I mean, it was clearly an event done by professionals.
Yeah, Jesus and Mero, they absolutely killed it. They were hilarious. I can't remember a lot of the other names that were there, but you had the one guy who looked like Erwin R. Shyster from the WWE, making all the pop culture references. He was pretty funny. But it wasn't – what'd you say? Brandon Schaub, yeah. Yeah, doing the pre-fight interviews. I like to see him there because he is a personality as well as a fighter. So, all around good event, way better than that nonsense we had from Triller about a month ago. I like Showtime. I'm looking forward to seeing another fight that we'll talk about a little bit later on Showtime at the end of August. So with that being said, we will jump into a little bit of a recap of this past weekend's subpar UFC fight night card. I'll tell you what, though, the first fight that I tuned into, it was perfect timing. It was my lock of the week, and that came out very profitable for me. That was Montana De La Rosa. I did have a prop on my blog for her to win by submission, mostly due to her history of doing so. That didn't come through. But on the flip side, Montana does show a lot of promise. She's a great wrestler and got her very first ever KO win over Ariane Lipski. So I was very happy about that. Boosted up the parlay. My parlay hit between her and Roman Dolidze. Unfortunately, Tom Breese was canceled last minute. But yeah, Montana De La Rosa came through. Got the money for us. Love her style. And can't wait to see what she does next, personally. I think she's got a promising career in that division. How'd your lock go?
Fuck you.
That wasn't a shot at you whatsoever.
Yeah, listen, Mark Juan he fought the fight that we thought he was going to fight against a bigger guy coming in on short notice. He took Camuela down, halfway through the first round, through most of the second round, and through a good portion of the third round. Took him down and held him down. Unfortunately, didn't do anything to advance position or really lay too much impact on Camuela Kirk. Camuela Kirk threw up a couple different submissions, beat him on the feet. I think significant strikes, total strikes, strike percentage. and did have a couple takedowns defended in there. There were no knockdowns, of course. So, all that being said, at first watch of the fight, I did think Marquand Americani won because of the control time. But, every judge judges differently, and I think this probably is the correct decision, being that, that Ken Wellerkirk, threw up a couple submissions, had much better on the feet, and he looked really good. Marquand looked less impressive than I had hoped, and Ken Wellerkirk showed a lot of the UFC. Compared to when he initially fought Billy Q. I would like to see a rematch of him and Billy Q. See where they're both at, see where the progression has been. But, Ken Weller showed a lot of great stand-up game against Marquand Americani, who, not phenomenal stand-up, but at least pretty solid. It was pretty, Ken Wellerkirk beat him there, had good jiu-jitsu on the ground. I'd like to see him, get out of some of those control positions that Marquand had him and kept him in. But all being said, it was a close fight. I wish it could have went Marquand's way. I needed him to be a little bit more active, but I'm not mad at the decision.
Yeah, I thought that was a good fight, watching that in post. I definitely agree with you. At first glance, that should have gone Americani's way, but unfortunately, that's just not how it went. Most of the fights we did pick the same. Like, we both had Roman Dolidze. He came through and just clutched. Who did he fight again? I can't remember his name now.
Laureano Staropoli.
Yes, he had his seatbelt the entire fight. Just was basically hugging him. I think they made full rotations of the octagon multiple times, just around the cage, just on the seatbelt, walking around, dog walking nonstop. And then even when they broke up, I think Staropoli got a couple of good hits on Dolidze. But ultimately, Dolidze just won with that control time. Nothing you can do about that. We said it ahead of time. Those Georgian fighters are coming out. They're coming out strong. They're coming out heavy. And he had an interesting game plan going into this one. Almost surprised that.
I hate this fight. I hate this fight from him. Listen, you're the bigger guy fighting at a weight class. You knew you were going to be fighting on that day.
Yeah.
He honestly took this fight on short notice, going up a weight class, and all you do is use your weight to hold him down. Granted, yeah, he won, right? And if you're Laureano Staropoli, yeah, you need to know how to get out of that position. But he didn't do anything to better his standing. Yeah, you won the fight, congratulations, but you're not moving up in anybody's rankings with that. You didn't do anything striking-wise to impress anybody. You didn't take him down. He just held him against the cage. Good for you. You're bigger and stronger than him. You belong in that weight class. It would be the same as if Jan just took Izzy and held him against the fence, and Izzy's like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm obviously not stronger than him. Like, what do you want me to do? The guy just used something. Weight classes for a reason, and this guy took it. He took it on short notice, went up a weight class, and all Roman Dolidze did is just push him into the cage. Granted, I get the argument. If you don't want me to do it, then make me stop. I get it. He did win the fight. I'm not arguing that. What I'm arguing is that if you're Roman Dolidze, you're here to impress people. You're at the lower end of the division. You want to rise to the top. You're not going to do it by hugging a guy who weighs less. That was just frustrating. Yeah, I'm happy we won, but I would have rather have won because our guy was better, not because our guy took a game plan that's kind of a chintzy way out.
Yeah, he did have takedowns on him. He said he had none. I think he had 3 double leg takedowns, 1 in each round. Obviously, that's not a lot, but
I think Staropoli got immediately back up.
Yeah.
So even if I count a takedown as you take him down and then you do something with it. You can't take him down and he immediately stand back up and be like, oh, well, I got the takedown. It's well, you didn't do anything. He got right back up. So I understand it counts as a stat, but in my mind, when I'm thinking about it, you didn't take him down and hold him down. You didn't take it. At least Marquand Americani took his guy down and held him down and forced him to get up.
Yeah.
Or he said, beat me here. At least I'm holding you down, right? Just pinning a guy against the cage, taking him down, him getting right back up. Again, it's not saying anything about you, your skill, or anything like that.
Yeah, well, I'm not complaining because he did come through and get us both a pick, and, he helped my parlay out. One pick that we both picked the same on, Miguel Baeza. That was an incredible banger of a fight. Really great brawl overall because, you don't see oftentimes where a guy is getting, Baeza pieced up. Oh, my God, his name is escaping me. This is what happened.
Santiago Ponzinibbio.
Yes, Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio is getting his leg pieced up the entire first round. It looked like it was Baeza's fight. Anytime Ponzinibbio got close and tried to throw a punch, his leg was getting eaten up. And we know that Ponzinibbio had a history of leg injuries, bone infections in that leg. So smart game plan by Baeza, but Ponzinibbio really showed some crazy drive, mental toughness on par with a guy like Tony Ferguson, one of your favorites, who's able to take that damage and just keep walking forward, throwing strikes. And eventually he had Baeza on the back foot to the point where he couldn't even throw those kicks at some point. And round 2 and 3 both went to Ponzinibbio just because of how tough he is and how he was able to get in there, get in the pocket, and make this a brawl. What'd you think about that one?
Yeah, that was a banger, dude. And I'm not even mad that we lost that fight. I wouldn't even say Miguel Baeza looked bad. I think, listen, when we picked this fight, we said, all signs point to Baeza. But the only caveat being if Santiago Ponzinibbio comes out and shows us that last fight against Li Jingliang was
ring rust.
Was ring rust. Hey, I haven't been here. I've had all these issues. And what did he do? He came out and he showed us not only is his mind a steel trap to where leg kicks just don't matter. He just completely ignored it. It didn't matter to him. He walked through the leg kicks that we saw him basically not even able to stand on. He said that the ring was really slippery, and that could be the case. Those logos, believe it or not, are actually very slippery. And if you watch, sometimes guys will make sure that they're not standing on a logo when they go to throw a leg kick, or if they slip and fall, 9 times out of 10, it's because their plant foot's on a logo. So why does the UFC do that? Why when you
that's tough.
Obstacles where the logos on it that you sell for money that the fighters don't see, making it slippery for them. Why? I have no idea. You can't print the vinyl already made up like that.
Yeah.
That's a point for another day. Santiago Ponzinibbio was slipping and or he couldn't plant on his lead leg because, a minute into the fight, Keith, I texted you. I was like, you can already see the bruises on the shin of Santiago Ponzinibbio from Miguel Baeza. And he came out in the second round, ignored it, gave Baeza leg kicks back to the point where in the third round, Baeza couldn't throw the leg because his leg was all chewed up. And these guys were just standing in there and banging. They were throwing punches. It was definitely Santiago Ponzinibbio won the second and third round. The third a little bit more up for discussion than the second round. All in the round, it was a good fight. That's why they both got post-fight bonuses. And, I'm really excited to see Santiago Ponzinibbio come back out and fight again. In betting, sometimes you can take a good bet and lose it, but it was still a good bet. This one, losing this Miguel Baeza, I think it's still a good bet. And going back, I would still take it again because, going into the fight, we thought we were going to see a chewed up, washed out Santiago Ponzinibbio. He came out, shocked the world, and good for him. Good on him.
Yeah, if I could take it again, I would definitely take Santiago Ponzinibbio, especially at the underdog money. I think he was plus 100 going in. And then after that second round,
with the knowledge you had going into the fight.
Yeah, most definitely. Obviously going back, I would still tune into that. But if I had a little time machine or like Back to the Future, could give myself the sports almanac, I'd be telling myself, yeah, money on Santiago Ponzinibbio. But I heard, I think it was Michael Bisping saying at one point, this was kind of a, slightly favorited fight towards Baeza going in, obviously, as we saw the lines and spoke about him on our last episode. But then after the second round, it was even at minus 100 apiece. So it really became a pick'em fight in the second round because at that point they're both 1-1, in terms of who won each round, probably with the availability for whoever to come out and win that third round, and it was Ponzinibbio. I don't think that there's even a debate there personally. No matter how you score it in a fight like this, you're typically scoring it with damage. Obviously, there was no control time really in grappling or anything like that. And you could see that Ponzinibbio really pieced up Baeza, and he made him feel it, and he was wobbling around bad. Baeza was wobbling around bad a few times in that third round. So I don't even think that's a tough one to dispute. Ponzinibbio now, I would like to see where he goes from here. He says, as everyone else says, I will be holding the belt at some point. Could that be true with a brain like that and a mental toughness like that? Quite potentially, he could, but only time will tell. The one where you got the edge on me this week was Walt Harris versus Marcin Tybura. My boy, big ticket, he looked very good, as he always does, with a huge flurry rush of punches off rip. That was very typical for him. But in this fight, more so than some of his other most recent matchups, Marcin Tybura really looked damaged. Now, a point that we made on our last show was that Marcin Tybura has a great chin, has wins over guys like Ben Rothwell, and that chin was on full display again on Saturday night. There's no question about it whether or not Marcin Tybura can eat punches at this point, whether he'll still be able to do that going forward after a bunch of fights like this. Who knows? We didn't even have the opportunity to see Walt Harris do what we said he was going to do in the past and gas out. I don't know if he was necessarily tired. I see the face that you're making right now. I just think it really came down to Marcin Tybura is a way better wrestler than Walt Harris is, and that's really it. And he just got him into the most vulnerable position possible, belly down, Marcin Tybura sitting on his back and laying into him with a lot of punches. I see your face. So what do you think? Did Walt gas out?
Well, I think partially he gassed out, but Walt did what Walt always does, and whether that be concluded with a gas out to finish it off, or is it just Walt's going to come out, he's going to give you a big flurry of punches, and then he's going to stop and ultimately get pinned up against the wall, taken down, and beaten on the ground. It's happened against his last few opponents. It happened in his last fight, and I told you it was going to happen in this fight. We said this is a bad stylistic matchup for Walt Harris going against the guy who has good wrestling, who has good ground and pound, and a guy who has a good chin. That's the opposite of what you want if you're Walt Harris. You want a guy with a glass chin, go down, and a guy who starts slow. So, to give him Marcin Tybura, I think, unfortunately, you want to root for Walt Harris. Maybe he'll get a fourth fight here, but, 3-fight losing streak, all losing the same exact way. And he lost in the first round to Alistair Overeem. He lost in the second round in his last fight, name's escaping me, and then just now he lost in the first round to Marcin Tybura. So it's not even like it's spelling improvement for the guy. You want to root for him, but I don't know if we're going to see him in the UFC again. Marcin Tybura, good win for him. Excited to see where he goes next. Maybe give him a Rozenstruik, I think, is going to go against Blades. So, give Marcin Tybura somebody, maybe in the top 10 to 5 range.
Sakai, maybe. I don't know. I think that might be.
Yeah, maybe Sakai.
Yeah, just maybe that's a little bit of recency bias, but jumping right into that one, speaking of Augusto Sakai, got you there, kid. Jarzhino Rozenstruik, he knocked Sakai the F out. It was lights out, and it wasn't even a shot that looked like it hit clearly on, Sakai's chin. It looked like it almost kind of brushed him a little bit, but Rozenstruik has power in his hands that could put down a small horse. That was really something else to see, a buzzer beater KO in a heavyweight fight. Unfortunately, semi-lock for me. The over in that fight, I kind of figured based on Rozenstruik's previous performances that maybe this would go a little bit longer. And after the first 2.5, 3 minutes of that first round, with both of them kind of sitting back, not throwing a lot, I was like, all right, maybe this is a good bet. Then Jarzhino just made connection with that one perfect punch, and it was lights out Sakai. Curious to see, like we mentioned, he called out Curtis Blades. I think that's a good fight to make. Those are two guys in, that mid-range of the heavyweight rankings that obviously Curtis Blades needs a win. Jarzhino Rozenstruik is hoping to carry on a little bit of a 2-win streak if he beats Curtis Blades there against a very formidable opponent. So we'll see what happens next, but I was really happy with that Rozenstruik win. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I said it was going to go one of two ways. Rozenstruik is either going to, catch him with one punch as Sakai's, trying to evade him or come in on him. Or Augusto Sakai's going to end up pinning him against the cage and taking him down and beating him on the ground. I really didn't see Augusto Sakai piecing him up on the feet too much and getting a KO that way. I didn't see any submissions by either of the two gentlemen. But we've learned that Jarzhino Rozenstruik is always a threat to knock somebody out, no matter who you are, especially if you are going to try and maintain distance from him. He has very long arms, a long reach, and he's going to be able to catch it. In this particular case, Sakai was moving away from him and caught him kind of, it looked like maybe in the back of the head and maybe on the chin and then the back of the head. So he's always a threat to catch you. I think you really have to worry about Jarzhino in like the last 10 seconds of a round for sure. I'd like to, let's see him go against Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades coming off a loss to Derek Lewis, so he's going to be motivated for a win. Jarzhino wants to keep the momentum. He thinks he figured out, his issue and why he was, why he, had such a bad performance against Cyril Gane. Why, again, I mean, I don't know if you can ever figure out what you're going to do better against Francis Ngannou, but, without weapons, I don't know what you're going to do against Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, you need a whole army to take that guy down. But so now we know at this point, I have a quick, question to pose for you. We know at this point, obviously, Francis is the strongest in the heavyweight division, most powerful punches. Derek Lewis, probably the best straight up boxer in the heavyweight division. Would you say that Jarzhino is the best kickboxer in the heavyweight division at this point?
Not particularly, no.
Okay, who would you put ahead of?
I think Stipe is really good stand-up. I guess it depends on what you classify as kickboxing. And are we going to say who's the best kickboxer, who's the best Muay Thai fighter, who's the best this and that, or is it who's the best striker versus who's the best grappler versus who's the best fighter?
Yeah.
If you're talking about technical, I think you got to look at Stipe or potentially John. If you count John.
Yeah. We'll see if he ever makes his heavyweight debut in the UFC.
Yeah. I think Jarzhino is probably one of the quickest.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think he's quick, and I think he's got very good accuracy. But because of that, he's a counter puncher, so he's never going to lead the dance, and unless it's in the final 5 or 10 seconds, apparently.
Right.
And maybe he should do that more because he's had, good success with that. So maybe he should try to come forward more often and see what happens. But, I don't know. I would say maybe he's the quickest and the most accurate, but I don't know. I mean, he definitely doesn't have the most. But what is power?
I'm not even saying the most powerful. We all know that Francis is the most powerful.
Yeah, but I'm saying like power versus what is it? Accuracy versus beats power, and precision beats speed.
I guess so. I've heard something like that before.
But it's something like that. It's either it's accuracy beats power and precision beats speed.
Okay. Yeah,
so
you have Jarzhino checking off a couple of those boxes there.
So it would be interesting. I'm wondering if he had learned anything from his prior fight with Francis. Do you remember that Francis Jarzhino fight? Francis just kind of came in there swinging his arms like a madman, swinging those freaking cinder blocks, and Jarzhino was like, oh my god, he just got caught. I think Francis is going to be a lot more patient, and Jarzhino would have learned from that. Who do you think has gotten better faster? Probably Francis.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you just see he's improved. Obviously, great striker. You mentioned his power. But then we saw in his fight against Stipe, he now knows how to wrestle a little bit too. So, yeah, when it comes down to improvements made over time, Francis made those steps to become the champion, and that's why he is wearing that gold belt right now. No doubt about it. While we're on the topic, I can't help but mention Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou is a fight that excites me. And it's not so much like, okay, I think Francis is going to lose that. We'll see as the time gets closer. I don't even know when it's booked for just yet. But a guy like Derek Lewis, I think could, unless Francis has actually gotten that good at wrestling where now he's going to use wrestling to start a fight. I think that if this is like an on-the-feet matchup, Derek Lewis actually kind of stands a chance against Francis Ngannou. I don't know. I kind of see it from Derek, especially after that KO of Curtis Blades while he was going to take him down with the most perfectly timed uppercut of all time. So, I don't know. I think
they're going to need a reinforced freaking cage.
Really?
They're going to have to reinforce that somehow, dude.
Yeah, there's going to be heavy, heavy bodies flying all over the place.
They're both guys who basically cut to 265.
That's crazy.
They might need 2 referees. Big John McCarthy may not be big enough.
Yeah. I can't wait to see that matchup. But, as that time gets closer, we'll definitely talk about that more. Make sure you like, subscribe. Probably should have said that sooner. But now that you're here and you made it this far, like this video, subscribe to our channel. And when that fight is officially set in stone, made, if it's not already, and when it's booked for a date, we will be talking about it on here. So, got something else we want to talk about real quick. Outside of the UFC realm, kind of jumping back to those Paul brothers, we do have Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley is an all-time favorite for longtime UFC fans. No denying that whatsoever. There was probably a time there where we could have said that Tyron Woodley was one of the best welterweights to ever walk into a UFC octagon. Obviously, I wouldn't call it an illusion, but that image of him in a lot of people's heads has faded after this 4-fight losing streak. Hasn't won a round in 4 fights in his last 15 rounds. So, it's tough, but I am excited to see him make his pro boxing debut on Showtime versus Jake Paul. I think there's a lot of things that scream must-watch TV about this. First of all, the fact that they're going over to Showtime as opposed to Triller. And if last night or, 2 nights ago when you're watching this on Tuesday when it's up, proved anything to everybody out there, Showtime is still a legitimate boxing promotion. So it won't be the show. It won't be 6 hours of concerts ahead of time. Maybe we'll have Migos or somebody like that walking Tyron Woodley out. But, it's going to be a exciting event. Secondly, you have Jake Paul, who's louder than ever, saying that Logan, who himself didn't even – he won that fight in a lot of ways, but he didn't beat Floyd Mayweather in the ring. Jake Paul is running his mouth on Twitter right now saying Floyd is now 50-1. Then Canelo responds and says, "Come on, man," or something like that, or just one of these emojis. And then you have Jake Paul saying, "You can't even sell pay-per-views. I will eat you alive," something along those lines. And then you have Tyron Woodley, who is trying to make a little bit of a redemption here for himself, get his name back out there as a winner. So I'm looking forward to this for many reasons. I have an interesting pick going in. But the one crazy thing I will say about this is when Tyron Woodley fought Kamaru Usman and Kamaru Usman snatched that belt from him, Tyron Woodley was the big favorite in that fight. And now he's going up against Jake Paul, who, say what you want about him, he's a YouTube kid, he's a Disney star, he only has a few professional fights. Tyron Woodley is now a big underdog. So I don't know. I kind of like the odds in this fight for him. We'll see at the end of August, how it goes, and we'll talk about it more as it gets closer. But the one thing I do really want to touch on was that face-off out in Miami with Dave Portnoy playing that Dana White role. Absolute comedy, absolute shit show. What was your take on all that madness and that clown show out in Miami?
Yeah, did we ever figure out what Dave was doing there?
So I was watching one of his podcasts, and apparently someone just called him up because he lives in Miami half the time now. And, he's partnered with the Paul brothers on Penn Gaming and Barstool Sportsbook. And I believe because of the connection between them, due to those reasons, someone on Jake Paul's team called him up and said, "Hey, we want you to moderate this face-off," essentially. If you watch Dave Portnoy.
So he's like Team Paul?
He's not – okay, he's more team – because I've watched a few of his things recently. He did have Logan Paul on, the BFF show, and Jake Paul followed on afterwards. And there was some interesting drama on there, too. We're not like a drama show or anything. But he is Team Logan Paul because Logan Paul does do a lot for that. He has a lot of exclusive bets on the Barstool Sportsbook, a lot. And he does a lot to promote it. And I think that Logan Paul has an equity deal with Penn and Barstool. On the flip side, I'm not sure what Jake's involvement is, but I also know that Dave Portnoy is a bit of a disruptor and likes when people on the internet are out there making a name for themselves, trolling people in a way. So I wouldn't necessarily say that he's Team Jake Paul going into this fight if he's a big Jake Paul fan of his boxing. and I don't want to speak for him here at all, but I'm sure, just as a lot of other people are, he's entertained by this. And when you get the phone call saying, hey, you can be in between, you could be the face in between two of the biggest draws or the biggest draw in fighting right now, in terms of just like general speculation and social media. Well, Dave Portnoy lives on social media. I can't see him passing up that opportunity. He said he had nothing to say and didn't know what was going on half the time, but he's not going to pass up on an opportunity like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't fault him for it. I didn't know the connection. And then when you said, with the Paul, I was like, oh, wait, so he was there on behalf of Jake. But, yeah, listen, I think you're going to see Jake basically in a battle of wits with maybe someone who's going to be a little bit more his level. I mean, Ben Askren, I don't think worst person that he could have matched up against in terms of a verbal back and forth would have been like Michael Bisping, which was, apparently in talks, or Chael. So, I mean, those are two guys that would absolutely annihilate Jake and make him look stupid. I think Tyron Woodley will go back and forth with them and not, show so much of an intellectual disparity in terms of, how they're going to attack each other. But here's Jake's only argument against Tyron is, I beat your buddy, who, admittedly wasn't a boxer. He beat Nate, who definitely wasn't a boxer. And he beat another who we don't even know that guy. And I can't imagine he was any good. So, Jake's still yet to prove himself against any legitimate competition. Tyron, we know, can actually throw hands and has successfully before. Whether he is at the level in which we remember him as is largely irrelevant, because he can still throw and still land against top-level competition. And, all Jake will say is, oh, you're 43 or you're 40 years old. You lost your last 4 fights. And Tyron will go, okay, but it was against literally the best in the world. It was against the current welterweight potential GOAT, or the active GOAT, if you will. Colby Covington, who broke his rib, Vicente Luque, and who's the fourth one I'm missing?
I can't think of it off the top of my head. I know Luque was his most recent fight. I'm not sure who else, but we'll touch it back on that when the time comes, in August.
Either way, it was 4 of some of the most hard-hitting and the best in the world at welterweight. And remind you, he's got to worry about them kicking them, hitting them, kneeing them, taking them down, wrestling, like all of that. I think and on top of all of those things, I think Tyron is going to take this actually more seriously than Jake. I think Jake is maybe going to get a little bit too caught up in the social media aspect and the fame and all of that. I think he had a lot to prove against Ben. And I think now, especially what Tyron said, you got all these yes men around you. I think his training is probably going to take a hit from the fame, similar to maybe Dustin Poirier going against Conor this time. Maybe. Not as much for Dustin. Maybe not at all for Dustin, but I do think that Jake Paul is going to have a training hit in terms of preparedness due to all the new, not newfound fame, but the boxing, people giving him some boxing props. I think he is going to go to his head. And I think Tyron is so committed to not losing and so angry. I think he's going to train with Floyd. He's already been training with some top boxing. He's already been training. I saw a picture today, Monday, and I think also yesterday of him, post-boxing workouts. I think Tyron's going to take this incredibly seriously, potentially more serious than he took his final MMA fights. I think Tyron may be looking to launch a career at this, and he's going to start it by beating up a guy he has actual gripes with, and a guy that, is maybe underestimating Tyron.
Yeah, I mean, the argument with fame, tough one to make with a guy like Jake Paul. He has lived in the spotlight since the days of Vine. I mean, that guy's been world famous, no doubt about it, since he was probably 13.
But he's more famous now because now he's more in the spotlight now, and he thrives with everyone hating him. He loves everyone hating him, and now all of MMA hates him. I think, and especially now having a win over them. I mean, listen, I think he's been more active, and I've seen him more on my timeline doing things. And maybe I'm biased because I didn't really have him on it much before, but right now, leading up to the Tyron fight, as compared to early on and announcing the Ben Askren fight, he is much more in the public eye, and it's seemingly pumping out a lot more. He's a lot more like, I don't know, maybe this is an incorrect perspective, but I feel like that Jake is maybe letting the fact that he has 3 knockouts now and knocked out Ben, and he thinks that Tyron is kind of over the hill, and he may be. I think he's letting that go to his head a little bit, and I think his training might be at might be on the chopping block because he's going to be too focused on, the fame. Yes, he's been famous, but he hasn't been, athletic famous.
No doubt about that. Yeah, this is a different kind of fame. I still can kind of see from this guy, Jake Paul has clearly proven himself to be driven, and he does want to be successful in the sport. We've seen at this point, it's not all a gimmick for this guy. I think there's a chance that when you have a guy like that that's had fame in other areas and is a bit of a celebrity going in, not as big as he is now, like you said, but there may be a level of, okay, everyone hates me. I don't want to lose this fame that I've garnered and continue to get more. He does still have other guys he wants to fight, right? He mentioned that he has a hit list, essentially, of people that he wants to knock out. And on the flip side, in today's day and age, Jake Paul doesn't want to be anybody's meme. I think that that's a big driving force. We saw that with Pat Ball when he was on our show. He said, I don't want to be anybody's meme. So I think there is that bit of a driving force for him there as well, where he knows, like, he's so deep in the social media game. It's like, I don't want to be anybody's, funny clip that they're like, we see it today. Logan Paul hugging Floyd Mayweather throughout the fight is already, me and my stock portfolio when it's dipping 80% and he's holding him up. It's like, you don't want to be that guy. So I kind of think with the understanding of how the internet works, there may be still that like drive within him. It's definitely a potential that he loses it at some point due to all the fame. But I still think right now these guys are still kind of just emerging in a way. We even see it with Logan Paul. Like last night against Floyd, that was purely just a resume booster for him so that he has an easier time booking fights in the future with like higher level competition. I think with Jake Paul, he's already got that spotlight on him. He's already, in a way, been tested, not against good competition, but now this is a step up. I think that every fight for him is like proving ground. Can't see him being like, okay, I'm going to take this one off, because he knows that Tyron Woodley does have stronger hands. Like, I don't think that he says these things for the spotlight. And it's like any other fighter, he's selling the fight, but we all know that Jake Paul at this point knows who Tyron Woodley is, that he has power. If he didn't think of Tyron Woodley as a actual competitor for him, he wouldn't have picked him for this fight. I don't know. I mean, obviously the Ben Askren one, he picked him because that's a real fighter and probably was the best name that he could book. Tyron Woodley, there's a lot of like personal vendetta there. But at the same time, you see how many people were actively saying on social media, I do want to fight this guy. So Jake Paul's not, his reach doesn't exceed his grasp at this point, where he's like, okay, give me Tyson Fury. He is calling out guys like Canelo, but he's still being a little bit realistic with himself. He's picking a guy who's 40, picking a guy who hasn't won in 4 fights, but still has power in his hands. And I personally can't see him underestimating Tyron. Maybe he's really that stupid, like everybody thinks. I don't know. I think that these guys are way too smart, and they know how to game the social media system.
I think he's got so many yes men around him. He really believes that he is God's gift to boxing, and he thinks that he's better than he is. And because of that, the training takes a hit. I'm not saying that he necessarily goes, I don't need to train today, and goes and fucks off. But I'm saying that I think because he's got so many yes men around him, and because he's had only success to this point, because his competition really didn't know how to box, he's in for a rude awakening against Tyron, and he can't really see that because he thinks he's such a good boxer, because everyone around him is telling him so, and the results are kind of leading him to believe that. As a fighter, you need to always think that everyone's there to come for you. And I think he thinks he's the best of all time too early, and I think it's going to bite him in the ass, because if he really does believe he's the best of all time, or he's best, he's God's gift, all of these things, I think his training and his effort level to some capacity is going to take a hit, and that you're not going to get I think the Jake Paul that boxed Ben Askren, I think, may be better than the Jake Paul that boxes Tyron Woodley, because he has so many yes men around him, and because, at least from his actions, it looks as though he believes he has reached the top of the mountain already. I'll take on anyone, I'll box it. And he's calling out everybody. And it's like, you really don't know the discrepancy between Ben Askren and Canelo Alvarez to be able to beat one and then to talk shit to the other.
Yeah, no, that's it's tough to argue with that. Only time is going to tell, and the only person who really knows that would be Jake Paul himself. To quote Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Don't really think that Jake Paul has been punched in the mouth by anybody serious. So, yeah, we'll see. Only time is going to tell. We'll be talking about this more as the fight approaches. I'm sure that there's going to be plenty of social media beef, Jake Paul slicing other people's tires. The only place that you're going to hear about it and get the common man's perspective on these fights, on this beef, on everything going forward, and some great betting picks is right here at Pickin Fights and on pickinwinners.org. So make sure you like, you subscribe, you check out the website. Tom, you have a great night. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back soon to bring you picks for UFC 263.